Let's take a look at some information and charts on Uniswap for Brave New Coin. So Uniswap is a decentralized exchange. At their core, the purpose of a decentralized exchange is to allow for non-custodial trading. In most cases, DEXs don't even have an order book. In most cases, they don't have limit orders. They don't have any of that stuff. So most of this is market order type activity, but it's fairly simple to swap from any token really you can think of to any other token through a variety of DEXs. In Uniswap's case, they have specific approved listings, as far as I can understand, based on governance, I think. And in Sushi's case, they list many more things, and it varies from DEX to DEX. So the idea is you can trade basically anything to or into out of anything else. How this works is through automated market making, AMM. This is where the yield farming component comes in, liquidity mining, all these terms are related. And if we look at the liquidity, it's around 8.2 billion, which is massive for a decentralized exchange. So this is all notional value that's plugged into Uniswap in a non-custodial way to support the automated market making and or governance and or a bunch of other stuff. If we look at where most of the liquidity is sitting, it is sitting in FEI, which is a new stablecoin or non-stablecoin. It's had some issues recently. But aside from these two pairs, it's mostly the bigger stuff like BTC, ETH, that generally holds most of the liquidity on many of these DEXs unless there's an incentive to go elsewhere. So based on the pools, you may get certain incentives to participate in certain pairs. Volume also exploding over the past year to all-time highs, rivaling centralized exchanges at this point. Certainly. On March 23rd, they announced version 3. They also tacked onto this a legal clause preventing Sushi from just stealing it right away, the competitor exchange. So if you want to get in the weeds on this specific update and upgrade, you can. They talk about layer 2. The big thing with anything on ETH is the fees. What are they going to do about it? What are the exchanges going to do about it? If fees improve, volumes come back to these DEXs. It allows more people to participate. It doesn't price people out of activity, which is really the important part. If you look at all DEX volume across the board here on DeFi Prime, which pulls info from Dune Analytics, most of the volume over the past 24 hours is Uni, followed by Curve, Sushi, 1inch, ZRX, and on and on and on. But for the most part, Uni has been the market leader. We can look at since March 15th in the pink here, it's a Uni show for the most part. Curve today has really taken off volume-wise, but for the most part, that's been Curve and Sushi, and anything else has been muted relative to the Uniswap volume. And even on a monthly basis, it's pretty clear that Uniswap is by far and away the leader in the DEX ecosystem. If we take a look at some of the on-chain stats for the Uni token, you can see the initial transactions when the token got airdropped back in September 2020. And since then, transactions per day haven't really done much of anything. And I say this for all the tokens, but if it's a governance token, I wouldn't expect it to necessarily have on-chain activity. It's not a currency per se. You're not generally moving it a bunch of times around places. If you're using it as part of a swap or something, then you are holding it somewhere for an extended period of time. So I don't necessarily expect transactions to increase in a giant way for any of these DEX tokens. The transactions per day have been declining since February. So there is some speculation baked into this as far as the effect of speculation on the transaction activity. So that has also declined. Average transaction values spiked. I'm guessing this was some sort of team unlock or some token unlock that caused this spike. If we look at no averages, it was a 687,000 average transaction size for the day. But in any case, I don't expect these metrics to look great compared to other stuff. Active addresses continue to kind of hold at a non-exciting level, less than 4,000, less than 5,000 active addresses. And again, I wouldn't necessarily expect these to just explode over time. NVT also maybe not an impressive metric to look at for governance tokens because, again, you don't necessarily expect a lot of on-chain activity, and NVT specifically looks at on-chain activity versus market cap. So with a rising NVT in a vacuum, you'd say, okay, this is bearish, it's overbought, market is overpriced relative to on-chain activity. But taking into account what Uni actually is and does, maybe NVT is certainly less valuable than for other chains. If we look at the total value locked in Uni, which is maybe a better metric, on DeFi Pulse, it's continued to increase kind of quarter over quarter from September to Q3 2020, Q4 2020, and Q1 2021 has seen a massive explosion in growth, nearing 6.5 billion, a recent all-time high, according to DeFi Pulse. And if we look at the bank, it has it at 9.5 billion currently, and if we look at Uniswap's site, they have it at 8.2 billion. So it's important to look around if you're really trying to dig into this stuff, because all these sites kind of calculate things a little differently. Nevertheless, all of them are reporting numbers nearing 10 billion, arguably. You can see how trading volumes kind of peaked and then plateaued with ETH fees here. Same thing with transactions, users, the party's happening on PancakeSwap, right? Because of the fees. So if it's too expensive on Uni and people still want to play that game, they're going to do it elsewhere, certainly. So I don't think Uni's going anywhere anytime soon, obviously, but the fees definitely need to be sorted out. Google Trends for Uniswap also hitting all-time highs end of March, pulling back slightly, but overall tons of search activity for Uniswap, which I assume is the one and only, not necessarily any other word in the English language. But all of this represents new retail participants or new participants searching, what is Uni, or some stories about Uni, or version 3, which is probably what this spike was. Tons of press, things like that. If we look at technicals on the 4-hour for Uni USD, the 50 and the 200 are crossed bullish on the 4-hour. Not really enough data to kind of zoom way out using the high time frame EMAs. But overall, it looks fine trend-wise. There's not necessarily any pattern or anything up here. It's a channel, I guess. Arguably, it's not necessarily anything else. And it's between the R1, R2 monthly pivot. It did have an all-time high thanks to the Coinbase listing, most likely. It kind of dumped on the version 3 announcement, but it pumped on the Coinbase listing, or expectation of the Coinbase listing today on the 14th. On the way down, there's not a lot of volume to support, massive downside move. But overall trend looks fine. It doesn't look bearish, doesn't even look neutral. It looks just sideways up, right? It doesn't, there's no patterns here per se. There's really nothing going on to really comment on, honestly. It just looks like it's grinding on highs. And if we go to the 12-hour cloud, which got you in at the end of December on a variety of Kumo breakouts and or bullish TK recross above the cloud and or inverted head and shoulders, if you're watching that at that time. Since then, it's just been all up. You get a TK cross recross here, so you get in and back out, or out and back in. And now we have another TK cross recross above the cloud with price holding above the cloud, telling you to get back in once again. So as things go sideways and trendless or neutral, trend indicators become less useful, but nevertheless, it's still projecting a bullish continuation. Strength of that obviously yet to be determined, but the expectation is certainly bullish continuation. Now, if this drops below the cloud, if everything goes bearish, then that's a different conversation. But right now, trend metrics on the 12-hour, which is decently high for DeFi stuff as far as timeframes are concerned, high timeframe data capture looks ready for up bullish continuation. Uni BTC looks, again, random walkish, right? You look at this, I looked at this Uni ETH chart, right? And it's like, I don't know what's going on here. It's bullish, I guess. Trend metrics are bullish on the 12-hour, but it's, there's nothing really to say about it. There's not even a div. It's just all over the place, right? Maybe you can draw this as a channel and you fib it out. There's decent volume support at 50,000 sats. If this breaks highs, you'd expect 90,000 to the lucrative 001 BTC level. So it doesn't look bearish. It just doesn't look like much of anything, right? And the Uni ETH chart, who knows, right? I have no idea, but trend metrics look fine. This isn't really a direct pair that's traded per se, but it's important, I think, for all of the DeFi stuff to look at these ETH pairs, because at the end of the day, people are choosing between ETH and Uni, right? If you're participating in a swap or something, or using the ETH to do stuff on Uni, there's a decision that needs to be made, and it may not be traded actively, right? But it's still a chart that we can look at for signals, and there's no signal here. And lastly, I'll just mention the managed DeFi portfolio over at Enzyme.finance. We're in the initial stages of ramping this fund. It is a non-custodial portfolio management tool, so you can look at all the trades, the deposits, the coins, the allocations. Uni is definitely going to be a part of this portfolio. You can look at the trades, deposits. I haven't done much with this one yet, but we do have decent amount of trading history at this point on the ETH BTC fund with 4.23 million in AUM. So that's all I have for this one. Dislike, comment, share, subscribe. If you have any questions about the video or Enzyme, leave them in the comments below, and happy trading.